If you want to talk about a red flag for sodium dichromate acute effects, high level, high incidence of nosebleeds.
Nosebleeds or, nosebleeds and infected and running noses or having scabs in the nose and things like that would show that there's been an involvement in the nasal mucosa. That's correct.
Basic rule occupational medicine, attempt to identify exposures before you put the worker at risk.
Correct.
Why is it so important that basic rule occupational risk, occupational exposures, identify the hazards before you put men, women at risk?
So you can perform the proper protection for those individuals.
Is that why it's so critically important to conduct a accurate assessment before putting men, women at risk?
That ordinarily is done, that's correct.
Well, shouldn't it always be done?
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
If we're talking about a standard of care for KBR and Halliburton 2003, anywhere in the world, basic rule is conduct a proper assessment before putting men at risk.
That's correct.
You don't know whether that was ever done for Qarmat Ali, do you?
I would not know that, no.
You know that you played, according to your testimony, zero part in attempting to identify potential risks to the men at Qarmat Ali before they were put on site.
That's correct.
What would be the problem with continuing to expose workers, soldiers on site to sodium dichromate if you don't know the level of hazard?
What would be the what?
Problem with that?
Well, that's not something that would ordinarily be done, that's correct,
Ever be done?
Shouldn't, no, that's correct.
Why?
Well, you don't want to expose people to hazardous chemicals. We don't do that anywhere else in the world, nor would we do it there. I mean, you don't want to knowingly expose people to chemicals or have the hazards. In a lot of cases, you have to, but because of the nature of the job, but you would provide them with the proper protective equipment.
Familiar with the appropriate medical tests to identify levels of exposure to sodium dichromate and its chemical components? Are you?
I'm somewhat familiar, yes.
What are the appropriate tests for identifying hexavalent chromium exposure in humans?
Well, I'm not sure. My understanding is it's a very difficult test to do because it has to be extracted from red cells. So what you do is you get, when you look at chromium blood levels, you can't separate out hexavalent very easily from the total chromium blood level. There
was zero testing for hexavalent chromium picker.
Correct.
You knew that.
Correct.
Did you communicate that there had been no testing of any blood for hexavalent chromium to the managers in these meetings you've told us about?
Yes, they had to be apprised of the fact that I mean, I can't tell you the exact discussions when they took place, but they were apprised of the fact that blood chromium level really didn't mean very much to us because it didn't separate out chromiums that were necessary, that you look at, the hexavalent and the trivalent.
Did you also communicate in these same meetings, if we want to identify levels of hexavalent chromium exposures, there's tests available?
I don't recall. I really don't recall that. As I recall, it became an issue with the insurance company, and we had very little involvement after the tests were done with looking at anything else further, as I can recall.
What do you mean it became an issue with the insurance company?
Let me go
ahead and finish, Doctor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What do you mean it became an issue with the insurance company that had some involvement in what kind of test would be done on these men?
Well, they picked up, as I recall, the insurance company, I think was it AIG? One of them picked up the potential claim, and in that case, they would then decide what further tests needed to be done and what they were going to do about it, and so on and so forth.